Hi, all my tribe, and welcome to the Modern Barbarian Podcast. May your days be filled with adventure, and your nights filled with cold drinks and warm companions. Today's episode is near and dear to my heart. It is about our daily routines, and how, if not properly cared for, can turn from something that makes us better into something that makes us far, far worse. I'm talking about something I call habitual drift. This can work either in our favor or against us. It can help us to build better habits or begin to destroy all of our hard work. I think a discussion into this topic will help all of my listeners learn something they can use to improve their lives. So, habitual drift. There's a few key points of this theory of mine that we'll need to discuss for everybody to make sense of this the way I do in my head and put it together into something you can use. The first thing is called the habitual drift continuum. Everybody remembers number lines from school, right? Zeros in the middle, all the negative numbers on one side, all the positive numbers on the other. A continuum is a lot like that. A continuum is a continuous sequence in which adjacent elements are not perceptibly different from each other, although the extremes can be quite distinct. So imagine a series of numbers on a line that we talked about, and you put that down into an infinite number of smaller numbers between 0 and 100 in each direction. The difference between 10 and 10.000000001 is imperceptibly small. You would never know that difference. But if you made that small shift 1,000 times, then it would get big enough to notice. That's kind of what habitual drift is. Similar process of a bunch of small changes adding up over time. So the habitual drift continuum applies to all the habits in our lives. We are either moving in the positive, moving in the negative, or at standstill. And the scale for me goes from, the perfect barbarian, all the way at one end, the extreme positive, and a total victim, the extreme negative, all the way at the other end. And we're always moving one direction or another on this continuum. We are either doing something that's going to make us better, more like our goal, or we are doing something that's going to make us worse, more like the victim. As we move back and forth through this discussion, we'll start to talk about our habits and how they work and whether they're moving us in the right direction or in the wrong direction on this continuum, this line. But the important thing is to realize is that this continuum exists, right? You're either always moving towards being better, or you're moving towards being worse, or you can do things that do both all in the same day and then wind up with like a net zero, no positive change. You do some stuff that helps you move towards the good side, and then later on in the day you do some stuff that moves you back towards the bad side, and they kind of cancel each other out. So that's the theory. That's how I put this together in my head. Hopefully you guys can use that. And let's work on applying a little bit of this theory with some discussion about habitual drift. How are we going to move, positive or negative, and how that works. So let's start with positive habitual drift. There's a few things we can do in the positive category to start moving in the direction we want to move. One of those is adding new good habits, right? So if you got something you want to do that you're not currently doing, that you know would be moving you in the right direction, if you practicing or training for fighting, right? Whether it be a martial art or going to a firearms training class or whatever it is, you decided you want to learn more combat skills to be able to better defend yourself in the future if things get squirrely. So how would you do that? How would you build that habit to start moving yourself towards the positive side of the continuum? Well, you start new habits by starting small, right? You don't want to overload and shock the system. So you start with something small and easy to start creating that new habit. For instance, with the combat skills thing we were talking about here. Say you wanted to get better at manipulation of a firearm. You own a firearm, you kind of rough with it, but you think you could shoot it if you had to. Well, you want to be more skilled than that, right? You want to know that if you needed to use that firearm, you would know what to do to defend your life. So you start a habit of dry practice. So with starting small, instead of going way too big, let's say you're going to learn to draw your pistol better. We're going to break this up, right? We've talked about goal setting before and how to do it. That bring this thing down into a small obtainable goal. You say, I want to get better at drawing my pistol. And we need to turn that into a habit of something you do over and over again to actually build this skill. 10,000 repetitions, right? So once that habit of the smaller and easier version is achieved, that's when you start increasing the difficulty. So for drawing the pistol, let's say you're going to draw your pistol for 5 minutes once a week. It's a pretty easy thing to do. So you set the day, you get up, or you do it after work or whatever. You go that day, every week, you do 5 minutes. You practice, boom, it's become a habit. You've stuck at it for a while, and now you don't even have to worry about it. This simple 5-minute drill that you do every Friday for, say, that's not a problem for you anymore. You've built that habit. So now to continue moving towards the positive on this continuum, to continue getting better than where you already are, we need to make that goal a little harder. Not only to help you get better at that skill, but you need to be doing that skill more. We need that habit to be a little bit bigger part of your life. Something manageable, though. So instead of 5 minutes once a week, let's go to 5 minutes twice a week. So you pick another day, say Tuesday, Thursday now. Well, you've already got Friday as your habit in this example, so we wouldn't want to change that. So we'd pick another day of the week, let's say Wednesday. And every Wednesday and Friday, you're going to practice with your firearm. And it's just 5 minutes a whack. And so you've added an extra day, made the habit a little bit bigger, moved a little further up the continuum towards the side you want to be on, until that becomes the new habit. Now it's 2 days a week. And you keep building on that and building on that, little small changes at a time, little small changes at a time, until you've gotten to a daily habit, say. You decided you're going to practice with your firearm 5 minutes every day. And then, slowly by adding days and working on it, you get to where you want to be, and now you have this daily dry practice routine or practice routine that you've worked on, and you've spent a lot of time to build this habit, and now it's making you a better fighter. And this works for any habit that you want. If you want to quit smoking, incremental decrease. Anything, or well, that's a bad example. That's a decrease. We're talking about positive gains. But you can build and gain any habit that you want to help you move up the line with this system. Whether it be, you want to work out more, you want to train more, you want to learn to pick locks, you want to, any of these skills that you think is cool that you would like to have, you just set this habit up and you start practicing in this set fashion. And you start increasing it a little bit after you build that habit. You make it a little bit more and a little bit more until, boom, you've got this new habit. And you're doing the thing all the time and your skills are going up. And you're marching slowly towards the positive side of your line. You're making a positive shift on the continuum of habitual drift. All right, so now you've built the new habit. Now we want to improve existing habits by making small changes. This is something else that you can do to continue to move towards the positive on the continuum of habitual drift. So you take an established habit and you make it slightly better or more difficult. So Most of us listening to this are probably already working out in some form or fashion. We understand how important it is to be in good physical condition, and we take our health seriously in case shit goes down. We can help defend the tribe. But we could always be better, right? All of us could be doing more. We could be stronger. We could be faster. So let's look at the working out habit as a chance to improve a habit that we already have. The average guy who actually works out 3 days a week. Okay? That's the national average of guys that work out. They work out 3 days a week, usually an hour each time. So for our discussion here, let's use that as our reference point. You've already got a habit working out 3 times a week for an hour at a whack. But you've decided that you want to be better. That's not gotten you to the goal that you wanted, but you've got that good habit built. How do we make that better? How do we increase that habit without overloading and shocking the system and making you quit? Because if you go too far, if you jump too far off in the deep end, you get frustrated, you get overloaded. With working out, you can get overtrained, injured, all kinds of things, and that can ruin the habit. That can actually lead to going the other way. So for this one, we want to take an established habit and make it slightly more difficult. So you've already got 3 days a week set. That's something that works for you. But you're working out for an hour at a time. Well, let's up that amount of time. So in order to do that and do it in a way that makes sense, you need to add something to the routine that makes sense. It's not just about the time. It's about utilizing the time. So add an additional exercise to each of your workout routines. Say now you're doing 3. That's what takes you your hour. You go in there, you got 3 different heavyweight exercises that you're doing. And you want to start getting stronger, faster, better, right? So we're going to add an additional exercise to each workout session. Go from 3 to 4. That should take you from an hour to an hour and 20, hour and 15 minutes, something like that. That's a small change, 1 additional set of exercises, not a big deal. Easy enough to do. And you run with that for a while until that's your new habit. It'll take a little bit of work. Give your body some time to adjust to the new increased load as you adapt to these things, and you should start noticing the changes. And then you restart with step 1. That's the new established habit. Now we take it and we make it a little bit more difficult. So instead of 4 exercises per workout session, 3 days a week, let's make it 4 exercises per workout session, 4 days a week. Then you got 3 recovery days, 4 work days, hour and a half workout sessions. That's about the max load for the average guy. I mean, if you're a competitive bodybuilder or competing in World's Strongest Man, you're not listening to me for workout advice anyway, because I am neither one of those. But for us normal guys, us guys out here who just want to be stronger, faster, better, that's about the max that we're going to be able to get in. Maybe a daily routine, if you really are dedicated to it, but you got to be careful not to be overtrained. You got to put some recovery in there, but that's off of this topic. But you see how this works, right? I've talked about it for a bit here. You see how this works. You start by making small changes, and that makes that drift up the habitual continuum here and gets your habit a little bit better and a little bit better, moving you closer to where you want to be and where you want to be. It's kind of the whole how you eat the elephant metaphor. You eat an elephant 1 bite at a time, right? If you try to shove a whole elephant leg down your throat, you'll die. But if you eat it 1 bite at a time, you'll get there eventually. Same thing. Make small incremental changes. Now, going with this, something that's important is your mental attitude that goes with it. Each of these is a victory. Each of these small changes is a victory. And we have to take time to celebrate our victories. That's important to our barbarian mentality. It's important to our mental health to realize that we are getting better. And getting better is a win. And we celebrate our wins. That's something that's critical to our success. So every time that you've made this change, you've made this habit a little bit better, you need to celebrate that. You need to be proud of yourself. You need to reward yourself in some way. Make it worth it, more so than just, okay, it was cool that I did it. But our brains are wired in a way that we can train ourselves, if you will, much like training an animal, that if we'll do this thing that we want, we get some reward at the end. That's what I use Fridays as what I call pillage day for. Every Friday is a celebration of the good of the week. I take time to think about all the things that I accomplished that week that I made the difference in, and I celebrate those. I have a real nice meal, have a nice beer that I like, take some time out for me, do some stuff that I enjoy, and make a day out of killing it. I get the best work done on Friday because I'm always in a good mood with that. I get some of the best workouts in on Fridays because I just really want to crush it. I want to see what I've gained all week, so I really push hard for new maxes on everything. And then I let it all go. I eat hard, I party hard. Friday is the day, right? That's the celebration. And you gotta have those, man. You've got to have your days where you can go have some fun, where you can celebrate the accomplishments of all the hard work you're doing. I know it's a little bit off topic of the habitual drift, but I think it's vitally important that everybody add some type of something like that. Maybe a day like that doesn't work for you. Maybe you need, daily, take 10 minutes every day and do it, or whatever it is. But for me, that's what works. But you have to celebrate your victories. You also have to be realistic in your faults. You need to realize, hey, I said I was going to do this and I'm not. I'm falling behind. I'm not getting where I need to be. That's the second half of this episode. But that all starts with being honest with yourself. That brutal self-honesty, introspection, taking a look in and realizing I'm not getting done what I need to get done. And then you can start working on it. So the final thing we can do for positive habitual drift are eliminating bad habits, again by starting small. So to eliminate bad habits, what do? Well, it's the exact opposite of building better good habits. We take a bad habit and we make a reduction in it slightly. So think real quick, what's some bad habits that you have? What are some things you wish you didn't do or you did less? Anybody that smokes should want to smoke less. Anybody that overeats or eats like crap should want to eat better. Those type of things. Any of these negative habits. You may have, maybe you're addicted to Coke. Fuck, I don't know. You could have all kinds of bad habits, right? But we want to start working on these. And in order to do that, what works for the most people is to start small, make small changes. An easy one is the smoking. Like that's an easy one to work with as an example of eliminating a negative habit. So most smokers, again, pack a day smokers. That's 20 cigarettes a day. You buy a pack every day. To start small, let's say you're going to cut that in half. You're only going to let yourself have 10 cigarettes a day. Make that pack last 2 days. And you keep that going for a while, let's say a week. And at the end of that week, you've adjusted to this new lower level of nicotine, smoking less. To steal a word from the crisis that's going on, it's become your new normal. All right, let's take some of those and turn them into something useful for us instead of just things we have to hate. Let's take new normal and make it something actually worthwhile. That's your new normal. Now you only smoke 10 cigarettes a day. Well, then let's try and cut that back a little bit more the next week. You go to 5 cigarettes a day. Now your pack's lasting you 4 days. And it's going to be difficult, but it's a small change. It's doable. And And you continue down this path until you get to where you don't want any more than that. Like that's what you've adjusted to. And you can keep making incremental changes and making it incrementally better till you've quit entirely, or maybe you're okay with having a couple cigarettes a day. Like that's an acceptable level for most people. Some people can stay there forever, as long as you don't let it start drifting back up and you keep tabs on it. Maybe you get to where you only allow yourself to smoke on your celebration day, right? Something like that. That could be your reward if you're super into smoking. That, all right, if I do good all week and I meet all my other stuff, I can let myself have a pack of smokes on celebration day. Whatever it is, that's a way cut back. That's a major change in a negative habit, drastically reduced. That will increase your quality of life. That will move you further up this habitual drift spectrum, more in line with your ultimate version of you, and less away from the victim down at the bottom where shit just happens to you and you have no control. You keep taking back more and more control. And if you keep using these three tools, you can keep moving up the scale, up the continuum, more in line again with who you really want to be. We need to realize too that at the very top of this continuum is basically unattainable. Nobody's ever going to be perfect. Everybody will have flaws. There will always be somebody who's better at something than you. There will always be a path that you can be on to be getting better or getting worse. Right? It's the journey that's there that's important. You will never be perfect. This is something you will do your whole life. And that's an important thing too. Again, with that mentality that we talk about, understanding that you will never be perfect, and that's okay. That not even to you will you ever be perfect, and that's okay. That you should always be trying to get better, because that's an important thing to be working on. Always be getting better. And with that, we come to a close on the positive side of habitual drift, which is really the smallest side of it. Yes, we need to be working to always be getting better, but habitual drift is really about understanding how we start to fall off. That's where this theory started, is, man, I used to be doing all this, and I had everything going, and then all of a sudden, I wake up one day and it's all gone. How did I get here? And that's where understanding habitual drift can help you understand how that happened and what you can do about it. But before we start down the side of the negatives and the standstills and how we wound up in a bad situation, I needed you to know what you can do about it if you realize it. You know, we have this conversation, you start realizing, man, I've lost a lot of stuff that I really enjoyed, that I liked about me. I'm not doing that anymore. What am I going to do about it? So now you've got some tools to work with. So we'll move now on to the negative side, where you can start looking for these things that I've lost this, I need this, I had this, and it's gone. What do I do about it? Before we do that, we're going to take a break, insert the little commercial here that they give us for trying to make a little bit of dough, getting into some financial freedom, one commercial at a time, if you will. So I appreciate it if you stick around, have a listen to me talk about this little commercial thing here, take this break, and when we come back, I'll start talking about the negative side of habitual drift. Welcome back. We've been talking about the habitual drift continuum. Mostly we've been on the positive side, but as promised, now that the commercial break is over, we'll get into the negative. So what is negative habitual drift? Well, negative habitual drift is how you start off with a good habit, something that's making you better, and it slowly decreases over time. Small incremental changes that you don't notice until all of a sudden you wake up one day and bam, it's either the habit's gone, or you're doing it so little that it doesn't matter, or the bad habit's gotten so big that it feels out of control. And you don't even realize how you got there, right? So let's start with this. Look at these pieces so you can start to understand how you got there. And then you can apply the stuff that we talked about earlier and start fixing it. So what are the forms of negative habitual drift? Well, the first one is detracting from good habits by allowing small slips. So we let a small slip in our habit happen. The weaker, lesser version of the habit after the slip then becomes accepted as the new baseline. And you see this, I mean, this theory is used in all types of things. I'm applying it to your daily habits, but you can see this in the world around you right now. When you start seeing more and more government control over your lives, or all the COVID crap that happened, you see at first there was no mask, it was just social distancing, and it was just going to be for, a couple weeks to stop the spread or whatever, to flatten the curve so the hospitals could handle it. And then it was, well, now everybody's got to wear masks, even though a couple weeks ago we said the mask didn't work. And then it was, well, a couple weeks didn't do it, it's going to be a couple months. And then it was a year. And you see this negative drift, small pieces at a time. You see it in the world all over. We're going to learn to apply it to ourselves and look for it and challenge it, defeat it, and get this crap out of our lives where we can be stronger, better, faster, smarter. So you look for the small slips in your habits. And these small slips happen and they create the new baseline. And then you start accepting the new baseline as good enough. All right, this is fine. It's still a decent habit. And then another small slip happens. And then another. And another. And these all compound until your habit has basically been destroyed or is completely destroyed. You're no longer doing it. You see that the small amount that you're doing it is no longer worth it, so you drop the habit entirely. And now it's gone. So you've slid down the spectrum more towards the victim, where you've lost control of what you want to be doing. You've lost a little bit of control on your life, and you start to deteriorate that skill, or that part of your health, or whatever it is. You've lost it. And again, it happens to you. It feels like overnight. You wake up one morning and bam, it's just gone, because you didn't notice all the little changes happening along the way because they were so small. They were infinitesimally small, so small as to not be noticeable really. And then those all added up something big, and then you noticed it. That's how this always works. You lose it small pieces at a time that you don't notice, and then you notice the big change at the end. You're like, damn, where did it go? So that's the first part of negative habitual drift, is where you start to deteriorate and lose good habits or good things from your life, small pieces at a time. Then you've got your bad habits. You can eliminate, or you can add to bad habits through the same small slip theory. Okay? So, again, for a bad habit, let's go with smoking, because it's so easy to use because of the numbers. But let's say you started off, you liked cigars, right? And if you'd sit down, you'd have a nice cigar and a bourbon every once in a while as part of your pillage day, your celebration. And that became an acceptable habit. And that was okay. That was within the realm of okay, totally acceptable. Then it switched. Well, it was hard to find cigars, and you like cigarettes, so you would have a couple cigarettes. There's a shift towards a little bit more negative, but still acceptable, mostly unnoticeable. Instead of a cigar, you can even say that was good, because the cigarettes have less total tobacco in them than the cigar. Either way, small change. And then you start to smoke more on that day. And then you start to smoke a little bit outside that day. And then before you know it, you're going through a couple packs a week. And now all of a sudden you're a smoker. And you wake up one morning and you're hacking stuff up, and your lungs hurt, and your run times are going down, and it's harder to do the stuff that you used to do. You get winded walking up the stairs. You're like, son of a bitch, how did this happen? 6 months ago, I could run an 8-minute mile, and now I get winded walking up the damn stairs, kind of thing. Where did this come from? So you got to step back and you got to start noticing those small incremental changes for what they are, because that's where you can win the fight. Once it's so far gone, you're going to have to start incremental changes back the other way to beat it. Very few people can cold turkey stuff. But you can incrementally start going until you beat it back. But it's easier to notice those small changes for what they are and don't let those occur. Because that's an unnoticeable thing. It's easier to take on than the great big thing. But that's, you can add really bad habits that same way. Just like the smoking one we're talking about. But it could be maybe your bad habit is skipping leg day. Maybe you hate doing squats. You got to put this big heavy bar for all this weight on you. You got to squat way down there and stand back up. It's uncomfortable and it's hard. Nobody likes doing it. That's what you tell yourself. Nobody likes doing this. Everybody hates it. Why am I doing this? And then, so it starts with every once in a while you skip leg day. You're just in a bad mood. You're like, cuss this. I'm not doing squats. Go do something else that I like. And then you look at it, and after a couple months, you just, you stop doing leg day altogether. You don't do squats anymore. And you look around, and you see those guys, you can see them, the guys that skip leg day, and they got the little tiny chicken legs, great big upper bodies, because that's what they like to work on. That's what they think everybody notices, and boom, then they got chicken leg syndrome. Little tiny legs. And for some people, they think that's okay. They think, I don't need it anyway. Until something comes around, they need to pick something heavy up off the floor that uses their legs, and they can't do it. You got this giant-looking man here, all jacked up because he works out just on his upper body all the time. And he used to pick up a heavy box off the floor, and his legs don't have the power to do it. He can't get it up. Cannot pick the thing up. So, we don't want to be that guy. We don't want that to happen to us. So we're going to notice that skipping squats is one of those first time, incrementally, barely noticeable changes. Or even more insidious would be like going down on the number of sets or reps on your squats, right? Until you stop doing them. That would be an even smaller change. Allowing yourself to say, I can go to sets of 4 on squats today. I'm just not feeling it. Or sets of 3 or whatever. Or I'm only going to do 2 sets instead of 3 sets today. And you start to lose this stuff. These small little changes. These insidious, the negative side of your brain whispers in there. Do you really need that 3rd set of squats today? I think 2 would cover it. Or, that 5th rep, that's really hard. Maybe let's just do 4 today. The truly insidious shit. And then you start losing it. You recognize those for what they are. And you cut them off. Nip them in the butt. Don't let them happen. Do not shift down the continuum. So, the next one is you can totally eliminate good habits after enough slips. Similar to what we were just talking about, your habit got worse on squats. You were losing the amount of reps you were doing, or you were losing the amount of sets you were doing, or you stopped adding weight to the bar, all this stuff. And all these little slips, finally, they start to add up. And that's the most extreme end of this scale, is the total loss of the habit. And now you're not doing legs at all. And we all know, we talked about that, what can happen. Or, any other good habit that you have. The same thing can happen to it. You can have these small incremental slips, and then those all compound up until what you're doing is no longer worth it to you anymore. It's not getting you anywhere. You get frustrated with it because you're not doing it right, and you just quit doing it altogether. This loss of good habit brings you closer to the total victim. You are no longer in control of your life. You have lost control of that thing that you wanted. It was important enough to you to start and build this habit. It was important enough to you to have the strength that you needed, or the speed that you needed, or the stamina that you needed, that you built this habit of doing whatever it was, or the skill, And then you started letting it slide, little bits at a time, and then, boom, it's gone. Like dust in the wind, poof, vaporizes and it is no more. And now you've lost that control. You're closer to being the victim, less close to the side of you that you actually want to be. And this also works, and this is how you get new bad habits altogether. You pick up a new bad habit by allowing something just a little. Starts with trying something for the first time. Somebody says, hey, this is really good, you should try this. And you know that this is something that's bad for you. Right? And I'm going to use an example that's the most extreme side of things that I could think of. Let's go as bad for us as possible, because I don't want anybody to feel singled out here. But you're a free American. You have the choice to make. You can do bad stuff. And let's say you decide that you're going to try heroin. That's a pretty bad habit to have, to be a heroin junkie. We all know that. So you decide you're going to try just a little. You got a buddy who's into this stuff. You're like, why don't you try this, man? You're really going to love it. It's great. Whatever, junkies say to each other to get other people to try it. I don't know. And then you try it for the first time. Ooh, you do like it, It's a cool, whatever feeling it is you get when you do the heroines. I don't know. But this negative thing, now, bad for you is enjoyable. It speaks to the victim part of your mentality, right? That's why most people that fall for drugs. They are trying to escape something. They feel like they have no control, and they're trying to get away from it. And this is an escape. I can stop thinking about it while I do this, right? The victim starts to take over, and it compounds. So they start with just a little bit, but they like the way it feels, or they like the not having to think about it. They like the freedom, the taboo, breaking the law, whatever it is that they like about it. And then the victim part of their mentality starts to take over, and this enjoyment leads to a small increase. Now, instead of trying it once, they're doing it once a week. And then they're doing it once a day. And then they're doing it all day, and they're addicted, and it's ruining their life, and it's become this full-blown bad habit. They lose really good jobs over it, or they lose significant others in their life over it, or all this stuff. It's become the new most important thing. Now, I know, it's a pretty drastic example, but I wanted to go as big a bad habit that people would realize that I would think, to illustrate how that works, right? It starts with something small. You enjoy it a little bit too much. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and before you know it, it's out of control. But there are other bad habits that we can fall into. Other things that we can allow that are just as insidious, if not as readily noticeable to the outside world. And these things are, just like I said, just as bad for us, but less noticeable to the world around us. I'm going to go with one that I've seen in a lot of people in my life that I think is probably the worst habit that all Americans can have, and that's indifference. So, you take a look around at the way our system works, and you've got kind of your one side calls the other side extremists. The right calls them the extreme left, the left calls them the extreme right. These two opposing factions that are really in their camps. Those are guys out there actually doing stuff. Those are guys out there making things happen. Then you come back in, and as you get closer and closer towards the middle, you get people that are more and more indifferent. The people that just want to be left alone, if you will. I want to go do my thing, and I want to be left alone. Well, that indifference is a bad habit. And it starts a little bit at a time, and it grows until it becomes this full-fledged big thing where you don't even pay attention to what's going on in your country anymore. I wash my hands of it. I don't care. I'm going to go live my life. I don't have time for this. And that indifference is what allows the crap to happen. We've seen it all over the world. You see it in the Russian Revolution, you saw it in the Communist Revolution in China, you saw it in the fall of Venezuela, and you're seeing it in America right now. People are indifferent. And you'll see some flare-ups, usually around election time, where a lot of people say, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to make a difference, right? And they get out there and they try a little bit, and, well, what do you know? It's hard. And it didn't work. The other side wound up winning, and now, well, it's pointless, I did all this work, and I didn't immediately get the outcome that I wanted on my very first try, and so now it's pointless. And they fall back into indifference. And they just sit in their house, and they watch their trash TV. They soak up their stimulus checks, and they buy their junk food, and just let the world happen around them. It's a horrible habit. Not being involved, not knowing what's going on, not doing anything anymore to protect their freedoms. They just let it all go. They become totally indifferent. And the world continues to go more and more against what they believe, because the loudmouths are more prevalent on one side, because they've been trained to be more loudmouthed on one side. We all know what I'm talking about. And they continue to buy the votes while most people are completely indifferent to what's going on. They outright steal an election with evidence, and they call it unfounded claims on all the news media, and they play it over and over again to where if the lie gets played enough, it becomes the truth. All the while, indifference. So that habit's even worse for you than drugs, people. And nobody wants to hear that, because most of you, most of my listeners are probably not indifferent. You wouldn't be listening to shit like this if you were truly indifferent. But you've got some indifference. I've got some indifference. We all have some. We all could be doing more to make more change. We all could be doing more to make the world right. But it's hard. It's hard to wake up every day and have to face that. It's hard to realize that there are crooks and cheats and criminals running our damn government, stealing our rights so that they can gain more money and more power, like they don't have enough already. Well, here I go, falling back into a little bit of a rant. So I'm going to pull this back to what we were originally talking about, trying to help you guys learn to get better. Help me learn to get better by putting my thoughts together like this, making it into something coherent. And let's get into the third part of the habitual drift continuum, which is standstill. No net change. Did a little good, did a little bad. Overall, you stood right where you were. This is better than a negative, but not near as good as a positive. And also totally theoretical. This doesn't actually exist. You are always moving up and down the continuum. It just usually is in such an imperceptible amount that you haven't noticed it. And what that really means is, if you're not making an effort to go up the continuum, you're probably going down. You may not have noticed it, but net zero usually means a small shift negative that you just didn't notice. You call it net zero so you feel better about it, so you don't have to feel bad about it. But really, you are sliding down the continuum. It's highly unlikely that you stood in exactly the same spot on this continuum. Too many things happen in a day that you either did or didn't do to stay exactly the same. And if you're not making, like I said, if you're not making that effort to go up, you're probably going down. So, understanding standstill, that it's entirely theoretical, that doesn't actually happen, is important. It helps us remember that we have to be working towards positive change, or we're going backwards. And that's important. That's That's the key takeaway from this little section here. Which leads us into our final tool, the final point of discussion for habitual drift. And I call that a habitual drift hard reset. So when you notice the drift has gone too far and you force a new baseline without going up or down the continuum to get there, that's a habitual drift hard reset. For example, cold turkey quitting smoking, detox, rehab, these type of things. These are hard resets of your point on the continuum. These are extreme circumstances and should not be taken lightly. They are extremely difficult things to do. They take more willpower than the average human being possesses to do. Typically, it's some form of service that you pay for to get there. And again, very, very difficult. But useful tools nonetheless. If you find that you have fallen way down the rabbit hole into some really bad habits, you can use this tool. Or, you can force a major jump into the positive with enough willpower to get through it. I told you some negative things to think about where you would use it to eliminate them. But let's talk about some positive things that you could use this hard reset to achieve. I'm going to fall back to my old standby of dry fire practice. Let's say that you've decided you are going to have a dry fire practice routine. And you don't want to go through habitual drift continuum method to get there, building this little bits at a time, slowly over time. You just want to have a routine. So you sit down, you write one out, you find a good one online, you use the one that I have. As a matter of fact, I'll put it in today's show notes in case anybody's interested, because I've talked about it a couple times. I'll spend the time to type it out for you guys. It's good stuff. But you decide, by God, I'm going to have this habit. So you get it all set up and you just go to it. And you make that, your whole focus for moving up the good spectrum this week is focused entirely on this one habit. And you pull off a hard reset. And now, bam, you have this habit. So that's how that works. It takes a tremendous amount of willpower, a tremendous amount of effort. And you have to focus solely on that one thing. There's no real room for your willpower to be taken on in multiple hard resets at a time and stuff like that. You got to focus all your energy into making this one thing happen. So, for this example, it's a 5-day-a-week dry practice regimen. So you're going to get up every day before work, and for those of you that work out before work, you're going to do this every day when you come home, or if you're working out at home, you got breaks between your sets, you got to rest before you can do it, right? Maybe you put this in there to work it in, make that time a little bit more useful instead of sitting playing on your phone between sets. Make that hour and a half be the most that it can be. Turn your workout sessions into barbarian training. See, there you go. I like the way that works. You get out there, you lift some heavy stuff, you practice with your firearms in between sets. You know what it's like to do it when you're tired, when it hurts, when it's hard, when you're breathing hard. Barbarian training. Think about it. But anyway, that's a hard reset. You make yourself jump whole hog into this habit, really apply all your willpower to get it. And that's our final tool to move up the continuum here. And hard resets are really only used for going up the continuum. They do happen sometimes to people by mistake that you get a hard reset, fall down the continuum. Those usually come from major injuries or life situations outside of your control. A lot of people went through that with the COVID crap. When they shut down all the gyms and they closed all the stores and you weren't allowed to go anywhere, if you didn't have some stuff at home and you didn't really focus on it, a lot of people lost all their workout habit. That habit of getting up and going to the gym before work, and now you're not going to the gym because it's closed. Hell, some people weren't even going to work because they were closed. So you're sitting on your ass at the couch, watching TV, drinking beer, eating Cheetos, right? And before you know it, hard reset, boom, your entire routine of working out, taking care of yourself, it's gone. So that's a forced hard reset in the wrong direction. But we don't, take that on ourselves with our willpower to force ourselves to go the wrong way. That'd be pretty dumb. But they do happen to us. And those are the times that I see the hard reset being the most useful tool. You know for a fact that you had this habit before, you've built it before, you liked it. It was taken away from you by something outside of your control, whether it was the COVID shutdowns, or you had a car wreck and you were injured, or you were lifting and got injured and you couldn't do any of the stuff that you normally do, and you had to heal up for a while, or whatever it was. That's where I see using the hard reset as the most useful tool. Is I'm going back to that. I know that I like this. I know that I enjoy this habit, and I'm not wasting my time building back up. I'm going back into this is my habit. Now you need to maybe come off the weights a little bit, come off the intensity a little bit. That's acceptable because you don't want to be hurt all the time. But the time that you do it, putting the habit back together, that's the hard reset. Something to think about. Another tool in the toolbox. And I want to throw around a few examples. I've talked about them all through here, but I want to list them in order for you guys just to think about some things that maybe you could apply this theory to. Some good examples are working out, increasing your productivity during the day, eating healthier, working towards financial freedom, learning new skills, training in combat skills. Those types of things are some examples of good things you can do to be moving up the spectrum. Some things you can be doing that's moving you down the spectrum that you need to be working on. Drinking to excess, smoking in excess, watching too much TV, eating too much junk food, not working out enough. These are the things that pull you down, that weigh you down, pull you down the continuum, more towards the victim. Those are your victim actions instead of your barbarian actions. So, just think about it, right? Think about what understanding this theory can do for you. You can sit back as an objective observer of your own life. You can introspect and critique your own actions based on this continuum, this line, and you can make a decision. Is this moving me in the direction I want to go, or is it moving me away from the direction I want to go? And if you can detach your emotions and use yourself as your own objective third party to look at what you're doing, you can see where you have areas that you need to improve and where you have areas that you're doing good. And you can work on all of these. I can get better here, I can stop doing this, and you can put together some small incremental improvement plans that over time all add up to big things. And you don't have to go out there and pay some coach or some self-help guru to do this for you, right? You take this tool that I've talked about here and you apply it to yourself. You step back, you look at your life as if it wasn't your life, use a little introspection, and you can help fix all your own stuff. You can find it, you can apply it, you can make the small changes, and now you don't have to pay somebody else to do it for you, right? So that was the goal here today, is to give you guys a tool that I've used, that I know personally works for me. I didn't have this name for it before I wrote this, right? I had to take what I do that helps me get better and write it out in a coherent way for you guys. So you won't find this terminology in any of my writings before, or anything I've talked about before, because I wrote it into a cohesive thing, into a coherent thing for this episode. But I've used this without calling it this for decades. This is how I've gone about the thought process in my brain of, am I getting better? Am I being the person I want to be? Or am I getting worse? Am I going the wrong way? So I hope it helps you guys. I hope you enjoy it. I hope it makes a positive change in your life. And with that, we're going to start bringing the episode to a close, which means all the episode closeout stuff. Follow me on all the social medias. The best one to follow me on would be Telegram. If you want to go there, the link is t.me/Modern Barbarian. I also have stuff on Wimkin, MeWe, Parler, a thing called Band, all that stuff. So any of those you can find me on. I'm Modern Barbarian on all of them. So I recommend that you pay attention to some of the social medias. There's some cool stuff goes in there. Mostly on the Telegram. I put a lot of shorts and blurbs on there. Some thoughts of the day. Then they come to me. That kind of stuff. Something you can enjoy. Also, share this podcast with your friends. Anybody you think that would enjoy it. That you think needs to hear it. If you think that this process, this tool of self-help could help any of your friends get a little bit better, understand some stuff that you've been trying to tell them, maybe coming from a third party would help, share the podcast with them if you think it'll help. If you enjoy the podcast, and consider subscribing to it. Maybe, I don't know if Anchor even has a like button, but if you're on a podcast that has the ability to like and subscribe, or maybe even leave a review, that really helps with the algorithms getting it out there. I'd really appreciate it if you take the time to do that. And that's about it, guys. So I'll leave that dry fire routine that I was talking about. I'll type it out into the show notes here so you guys can take it and print it off and use it if it's something that interests you. I know it works. It's the one that I've personally used. Works good for me. So I appreciate you guys coming in, taking the time to listen. I hope you enjoyed it. And that's all for today. Have a good weekend, my tribe, and I'll see you next time.